Have you ever heard of Marmite? If you live in the UK, then you probably have, but if not, it may be something new to you. I've been a chef for 10 years and I love to use it in cooking to add a lovely savoury, rich and umami flavour to my dishes. People often say that you either love it or hate it. In this video, I'm going to be explaining what it is, how I use it in cooking, its nutritional profile, and why I think you should give it a chance. Also, towards the end of the video, I'll be making a delicious noodle and cabbage stir fry with Marmite glazed mushrooms, which you just have to try. Firstly, what is Marmite? Well, Marmite is a dark, sticky yeast extract spread. I know, sounds really appealing. It's a concentrated yeast extract and it's a byproduct from brewing beer. Now you may be thinking, is it alcoholic? And the answer is 100% no. Any alcohol is evaporated in the process of making the Marmite. It's a bit like when you use red wine in making a bolognese or a stew. Also, one thing to note is there's a similar product called Bovril, but you don't want to buy that as it contains beef. Before we look at the nutritional profile of Marmite and whether or not it's an ultra-processed food, we're going to look at a few ways that I love to cook with it. First, I love to use it when making plant-based sausages or meatballs to give them a really lovely umami-rich flavor. Also, when I'm making a stew, a bolognese or chili, and I give it a taste and I'm like, it's just lacking in flavor a little bit, then I'll add a teaspoon of Marmite and that'll just give it a boost of salty umami goodness. Another way to use it is in gravy. I love to whisk it into vegetable stock and it really gives a nice body of flavor to your gravy. For example, I used it in these tofu steaks that I made in my first ever video on this channel, and it was a key ingredient in the sauce. Now, of course, the classic way to use Marmite is on a slice of buttered toast. This may sound silly, but there is an art to doing this, so let me quickly show you how it's done. Firstly, as soon as the toast comes out of the toaster, get some vegan butter on there so it melts beautifully. Then just a thin spread of Marmite. We're not spreading it on like peanut butter or Nutella. A sure way to not enjoy Marmite is if you add too much when you first try it. I remember when I was a kid and I would get a little bit poorly, the only thing I could eat would be some Marmite on toast, which my lovely mum would bring to me. And the salty goodness couldn't even be resisted when I was a bit under the weather. Now, before I go on to show you a delicious recipe using Marmite, let's look at the sort of nutritional profile of Marmite and see how unhealthy or even healthy it is. Firstly, is Marmite an ultra-processed food? And the answer to that is yes, but that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing. In Marmite's case, it has quite a unique nutritional profile, making it a great thing to eat in moderation in your diet. Marmite is incredibly rich in B vitamins, especially vitamin B12, which can be low in the vegan diet, or even just people's diets in general, not just vegans. One serving or a teaspoon contains 76% of your recommended vitamin B12 intake, 50% of your folic acid, 30% of niacin, 39% of B2 and 56% of B1. So it's really got you covered in pretty much all your B vitamins. And why is that important? Well, B vitamins play a key role in managing stress, easing anxiety, and supporting healthy brain function, plus just generally keeping you energized throughout the day. Now, one thing to note is the fairly high salt content in Marmite, one portion coming in at around 14% of your daily recommended intake, which isn't too bad, but if your doctor has recommended a low salt intake, then it is something to watch out for. They do also sell a reduced salt version, which has even more B vitamins in it, and it only comes in at around 8% of your recommended salt intake for the day. Another thing to mention about Marmite and its ultra-processed nature is that if you're using it to season healthy dishes like lentil stews, vegetable dishes, then I think that's a really good thing. Especially if you're coming from meat stews, sausages, burgers, this sort of thing, then a teaspoon of Marmite in your healthy vegetable stew, just to make it a bit more appetizing and delicious, is not going to be a problem. When I was doing my research into Marmite, I found out that the University of York have done a study looking at the link between Marmite and brain health. They found that eating a teaspoon of Marmite a day changed the brain signals towards calmness. This was probably thanks to the high quantity of B vitamins. Another study shows that people who regularly eat yeast-based spreads like Marmite often had lower reports of stress and anxiety. It's early research, but it could show that this little jar could do more than just adding flavor to your food. Okay, so let's get started with this quick and easy stir fry with Marmite glazed mushrooms. I've got these really nice whole wheat noodles here. They don't contain any egg, which is great. So we're just going to pop them in this bowl, get some water on them, and we'll leave them for about 6 minutes to cook. Every now and again, just go in there with a fork and separate the noodles just to ensure they cook evenly. We're just going to thinly slice 1 red onion. Then I'm going to crush and slice 2 garlic cloves. The easiest way to crush a garlic clove is to just press your knife on top and lightly crush it like so, and then the peel will come right off. And then just finely slice. We won't chop this up really fine because when we stir fry it, the heat's going to be really hot and it's just going to burn. Just going to drain off these noodles. I haven't cooked them for too long as we're going to be adding them back into the stir fry pan. I'm also going to rinse them in a little cold water just to make sure they don't continue cooking, and then just set them aside. For the tenderstem broccoli, or in America I believe it's called tenderstem broccoli, I'm just going to cut it down into slightly smaller pieces like so that it cooks nice and quickly. Since we're cooking on such a high heat, if the pieces are too large, they're going to burn before they cook through. Next, for the cabbage, we're simply going to thinly slice it as thin as you can get it. We'll add this towards the end of the cooking as it's going to cook in literally no time at all. Even with a small bit of sweetheart lettuce, you've got so much volume here when you finely shred it like this. For the ginger, I'm just going to remove the peel with a teaspoon, which is by far the easiest way to get the peel off. I don't always remove the peel, especially if it's been cooked for quite a long time. In this recipe, it's being added towards the end, so it's almost like a garnish, and I want it to be really nice and fresh and not too sort of woody. And then we'll just thinly slice it into little battens. This is also called Juilinne, if you want to use the French term. Nice and thinly, because we're not going to be cooking it for long. So it's going to add a really nice fresh kick of ginger to this stir fry. Just like that, that is perfect. Then I've got a nice bunch of coriander here, which I'm just going to roll up into a ball to sort of pack it together, and then I'm just going to finely slice it. If you don't like coriander, then you could use parsley or chives would be quite nice. Maybe use a little bit less if you're going to use chives though, as they can be quite sort of oniony and strong. Personally though, I could literally eat coriander by the bucketful, so I'm going to add a decent handful here. Adds a really nice lemony, fresh aspect to the stir fry. So I always like to have my mise en place ready when doing a stir fry, as we're cooking on a really high heat, so things are going to move quite quickly. So I've got the sesame oil ready, then we've got the onion, we've then got the chili and the garlic. Next we'll add the broccoli, then the shredded cabbage, some edamame beans, fresh ginger, coriander, and then a squeeze of lime to finish things off. So let's get cooking. So get yourself a wok, or if you don't have a wok, like in my case, we're just going to use a large, shallow pan. I just wanted to quickly mention that if you want early access to my YouTube videos, recipe PDFs, or you just want to support the channel, then be sure to check out my Patreon page. I'll link it in the description box, or if you're watching on TV, then just scan this QR code. Let that heat up for a minute or so, and then we're going to add in some sesame oil. Of course, if you want to do oil-free, then feel free to just use some water. To test it's hot enough, I just sort of hover my hand over, and if I can feel a good amount of heat coming off it, then I usually know it's ready to go. You'll also be able to see that the oil is almost shimmering, and that's a good sign that you can add in your first vegetable. And for us, that is going to be the red onion. Let that cook for just about a minute, and then we're going to add in the garlic. I'm also using just a little bit of this jarred chili, and then we'll only cook that for maybe 20 seconds before we add in our broccoli. Looking good, the aromas are really coming out now, so we can add in our broccoli. If it ever looks like something's getting a little bit too much color, then just add a splash of water. We'll cook the broccoli for just around 2 minutes, just to get it slightly softer before we add in the other ingredients. Okay, that's looking good. We can now add in the shredded cabbage.
Also going to add in some frozen edamame beans. Then we'll add in our little strips of ginger. The edamame beans have defrosted and the cabbage has wilted down, so we can now add in our whole wheat noodles. Give that all a good toss up. And then to finish things off, we're going to add the fresh coriander and a good squeeze of fresh lime juice. I'm going to use a whole lime here. They're not particularly juicy, so whole lime is going to be perfect. And then just stir everything through. I've made this stir fry really fresh and vibrant because we're now going to make the really umami and rich mushrooms. For the mushrooms, we're going to start by making a sort of glaze or sauce, you could say. And it's going to start with the key ingredient, which is of course Marmite. We're going to do about 2 teaspoons of Marmite. Then 1 teaspoon of light soy sauce. Actually, let's go for 2 teaspoons of light soy sauce. 1 teaspoon of maple syrup, just for a little sweetness. And then simply add boiling water and we're just going to whisk to combine. It'll look very runny now, but once we add it to the hot pan with the mushrooms, it's going to quickly evaporate and give it a nice glaze on those mushrooms. I'd love to use some portobello mushrooms for this recipe, but sadly I couldn't get any, so I've just got these white ones. And I'm simply going to remove the little stem here, and I'm not going to throw them away. I will use them in another recipe. Maybe something like a mushroom risotto, who knows. Get your pan onto a nice high heat and we'll let that come up to temperature. Then just add about a tablespoon of a high heat oil. Once again, if you're oil free, feel free to just use water. As you can see, they are sizzling away, so that is a good sign that the oil is hot enough. I think we're gonna go, yeah, we'll get in 5 mushrooms here pretty easily. These are starting to color nicely already due to that high heat, which is what we want. I'm going to use a method that the wonderful chef Derek Sarno uses, and that is just to sort of put something onto the mushrooms and give them a good pressing down, which is going to help release the moisture, making them more chewy and really nice and juicy. So just give that a good press down. You can use a pan, a plate works as well. Just be careful as the steam can escape around the sides and you don't want to get burnt. So the mushrooms have some really nice color on them, and I'm adding some Chinese 5-spice, which is a lovely fragrant blend of spices. I'm also adding some granulated garlic, touch of oil just so the spices don't burn. Really rub them into those spices. Beautiful. These tongs are not particularly good, if I'm honest. They're looking really good. Spices are toasted off now, and we can add in our sort of sauce or glaze. And we'll just let that reduce a little bit now. I want to keep it fairly saucy because we're going to drizzle it over the stir fry to help with the seasoning. And those are going to be the most umami, rich and juicy mushrooms you've ever had. Start with that lovely fresh stir fry. Try to get it on the plate, ideally. And then those succulent, fragrant, spiced mushrooms. Drizzle over the umami sauce. Don't add too much as it is going to be fairly salty. And then lastly, just a little sprinkle of sesame seeds. Let's just try the stir fry on its own first. So good. Really fresh. We get little hits of the fresh ginger as well. Let's give the mushrooms a try. Super juicy. Nice bit of chew, and you've got that fragrant 5-spice really coming through. It pairs perfectly with the umami mushrooms. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to subscribe and also check out this video for some more plant-based inspiration.